I'm Mark.
And I'm Josh.
And this is Alter Ego Comics TV, episode number 148. We're back with another batch of awesome comics for you. These are the books that we like the most that came out this week, and there was a lot to like. Probably the most anticipated book this week was Serenity Leaves on the Wind, issue number 1. This is one of 6. However, I don't know if it is going to be technically a miniseries or done in 6-issue arcs or 6 seasons. You know, we got a 6-issue season and then a break and then more. I guess we'll have to look and see what sales look like. By we, I mean Dark Horse. Yeah, it could be a 6-issue miniseries. But this is written by Zach Whedon, brother of Joss Whedon, fully endorsed, executive produced by Joss Whedon. Artwork by George Genti, who did the artwork on Buffy season 8 and 9.
9, yeah.
So he's very familiar with the Whedonverse. And as I said, this is probably the most anticipated book this week. Continues the storyline of the crew of Serenity from the TV show Firefly. Picks up, I believe, 8 or 9 months after the end of the movie Serenity. And it's fun. Zach Whedon has captured the essence of the characters, the voices of the characters. A lot of times when you read a licensed comic, characters just don't sound right, but they absolutely were spot on, in my opinion, in this one. The artwork is really good. Genti, his artwork, I think, is a little polarizing because it's kind of cartoony, but also he's good at capturing facial features on the characters, and we saw that with Buffy, and we see it again with Serenity Leaves on the Wind. So a lot is happening here. You know, at the end of the movie, please tell me you've seen the movie, so I can tell you what happens at the end of the movie. What, you haven't? Anyway, a character dies at the end. The survivors are all, hanging out here. One of the characters is pregnant, and we get to see kind of what happens there. A baby is born, a child is born, savior of, I don't know. It was just really good. If you're a fan, this is a no-brainer, folks. If you're a fan of Firefly, if you're a fan of Serenity, this is a must-buy. And there are 2 different covers to choose from for this first issue. I think they're doing 2 covers every issue, at least for the first couple. And they're equally good. Good stuff. I liked it.
This week I've got Black Science number 3, written by Rick Remender with art by Matt Scalaria. Yeah.
Peter Scolari.
Peter
Londo Malari.
Yes. And Black Science has just been a really great book for me. The first issue I liked. You've basically got your pulpy sci-fi stuff, somewhere between Lost in Space and Sliders. They're piercing from dimension to dimension. They're on the bleeding edge of the technology, and we're seeing the story kind of with intercut with background. Basically, we jump right in the middle, and we get a little bit of background filled in as the story goes on, and we're getting more and more each issue, and you're seeing sort of the tensions that were present in the first issue we didn't know about at the time, and I really love the way Remender's put this together. They're on an alternate Earth where the Native Americans are fighting the Nazis, well, the Germans, I'm not sure if they're Nazis or not, but Germans with mech suits and lasers, and it's just incredibly cool, and it's really human. They've got this great dynamic with the father and his kids and possible tensions in his marriage and the people he's working for funding his research, and it's just a really solid, fun, pulpy sci-fi book.
All right, next up for me is Thor, God of Thunder, number 18. This is written by Jason Aaron with artwork by Das Pastoras. That's what I said.
It's going to be huge.
Yes. And this is a standalone issue. We're done with the 3rd story arc of Thor, God of Thunder that involved Malekith, the Accursed, or Accursed, depending on where you're from. But this is, as I said, it's a one-shot, standalone. Thor fights a dragon. It's very cool.
And drinks.
Yes, there is drinking, there is vomiting, there are Viking maidens,
I love that we live in a world where I get to ask this nice question. Which Thor is it? It
is young Thor. This story takes place in 894 A.D.
I remembered well.
It is historical. It's a true story. I just have to give props to Das Pastoras' art in here. When Josh said, he's going to be big, I think he will be big. This is, if you're a fan of fantasy artwork, you have to check this issue out. Just really, really good. I don't know what else to say. Jason Aaron's run on Thor is turning out to be excellent. as is most everything that Jason Aaron writes. And the artists that they're choosing to pair him up with are really fantastic as well. So this is apparently the only issue that Das Pastores is doing, but hopefully we'll see more work from him. And as I said, fantasy fans, you don't want to miss this one.
Next up, I've got Adventures of Superman #9, written by Christos Gage with art by Eduardo Francisco. And this, like all the stories in the Superman Adventures series, is self-contained one-off. This is a Bizarro story, and both this and Legends of the Dark Knight are set in a non-committal version of the DC Universe. These are essentially your pre-New 52 incarnations. Superman's got his red panties on the outside, and it's just so great. It's great to have one-and-done stories that you can just pick up and read, that you don't have to have had a bunch of continuity, you don't have to worry about getting the next issue. All you want is one solid issue of comics. This is the book where you find it. This one is a Bizarro story called Flowers for Bizarro. It's about an attempt to fix Bizarro, or maybe to help Bizarro so that he can function like a normal person, because Bizarro's not a bad guy. You know, he just doesn't understand what's going on. He's the opposite of Superman. He's not overly bright, and it's just at once fun and kind of heartbreaking and just great comics.
And that's what's important, great comics. DC published some annuals this week, and the one that I want to talk about is Batman and Robin Annual #2. This is by Peter Tomasi and Doug Mahnke, but I think Patrick Gleason's in here too, yep, with an assist by Pat Gleason on the art side. And Bruce is, for some reason, nosing around in the drop ceiling of Wayne Manor. I don't really know why, but the story opens with Bruce on a ladder and Alfred holding the ladder.
I thought it was hard to hide stuff from your parents.
Yeah.
If your dad is Batman, you're just boned.
He's nosing around in Wayne Manor and finds a box that Damian has left. Of course, Damian is no longer with us, or with him. And it's addressed to Dick Grayson, to Nightwing. So Bruce calls Dick, he comes over, they hang out, and they open the box, and we get a flashback story of Dick as Robin, basically his first outing as Robin in the New 52 universe, so not with the green panties and little booties on, but actually in the Tim Drake Robin costume, for those of you that are still with me. And so there's a thread that weaves the stories together. The villain that Dick actually encounters on his first outing as Robin is one of the first villains, or one of the villains that Damian later encounters, and Damian leaves a souvenir for Dick. So it's a very cool flashback story, but also the present day moments are great between Bruce and Dick because they don't really hang out much together. But it's a nice tip of the hat to Damian as well, who could have turned out to be a really cool character. He was on his way, I think, to people appreciating him and his way of life. And so
the Robin who kills people. It's going to be big.
Damian, you're gone too soon.
That's been a year since it's been a year since the death. That's weird.
I know.
I don't know how to deal with that. I actually like Damian better in flashbacks. I like these stories where I'm like, oh, I remember how Damian was, and then we're like, I'll be sad, but I don't have to deal with him being snotty to Batman now. I like Damian dead in flashbacks. That's great. Over with another DC annual, of which there were several this week, we get Earth 2 Annual #2. And this is the long-awaited and much-anticipated origin of the new Batman in the Earth 2 universe. I can't tell you very much about this without spoiling who it is, but it's incredibly good. If you're a fan of the Batman mythos, if you like books like with Batman Earth 1, where you see kind of an alternate version, we're already in the Earth 2 universe, so it's already a little different from what we see in our timeline. They're back a little further in the past because Batman and Superman are older in that universe, and there's just so many nods, and it's interwoven, and it's just a great Batman story. Fans of any alternate reality stuff like Flashpoint, if you like the Batman and Flashpoint, this new version of a Batman in the alternate universe may appeal to you. Also ran, say also one more time. Another annual out this week is World's Finest Annual #1, which is set entirely in the Earth 2 universe. So if you're an Earth 2 fan, you've been following that, you definitely want to check out what Helena and Kara did when they were Robin and Supergirl.
The great thing about the Earth 2 universe is it is a completely different universe. Many of our viewers may not be old enough to remember when the JSA was on a different Earth and the JLA was on a different Earth, and they would cross over every once in a while. So different versions of characters that we're familiar with, so you don't necessarily have to know all of this backstory, although there isn't a whole lot of backstory in the New 52. Only 2 years worth. All right, on the graphic novel front, I wanted to talk about Batman and Son. There's a new printing of this out, and this is by Grant Morrison, Andy Kubert, J.H. Williams III, and Tony S. Daniel. And this is the introduction of the character of Damian, and one of the reasons why I'm talking about it is because I'm sure you've seen the trailer for the next DC animated movie that comes out after Justice League War. It's called Batman and Son, and it's going to be, this book. It's going to be the story of Damian and Batman. So if you'd like to read the source material, which is, I haven't seen the movie, but source material is pretty darn good, and as usually happens, source material ends up being better than the movie version. So it's a very thick graphic novel. It's got a lot of content in it, and if you are wondering who we're talking about, this Damian character, Damian Wayne, son of Batman, this is how you find out, who the character is, or if you like the character but you never picked up the earlier issues, or if you don't want to take out your single issues because you want them to remain pristine in your long boxes, pick up the new edition of the graphic novel, available now.
Oh yeah, and this is a heck of a deal. $19.99. It's huge. Like, this is much larger than I anticipated. I think this must have more in it than the old hardcover did. Yeah.
Just for reference, if this were a Marvel trade, it would be $50.
Yes. Thank you, DC, for having a reasonable price on your back issues. Now please reprint some good stuff like Quiver.
And Superman Batman Generations.
Oh, that'd be great. Please do that, if you're watching.
Quiver is important, too.
Quiver is very important. Last up this week, we've got Thunderbolts.
And Lightning.
Number 21. Very, very frightening. This is the second issue of the all-new Marvel Now version of the Thunderbolts, written by Charles Soule, with art by Carlo Barbieri, and with an assist from Israel Silva, probably on penciling or something. Sorry. Coloring. Why does one colorist get his name on the cover and the other two don't? That seems lame. Tough break, other guys. And we've got the Thunderbolts in Hell working with Ghost Rider. And this is actually... I'm not a huge Thunderbolts fan. I'm not crazy about these characters interacting. I kind of like some of them as lone wolves, which is their traditional format. But something about this group in Hell making deals with demons and having, the Red Leader negotiate, and Deadpool wants in to sell his soul for something, and it's a lot of fun. And if you're an X Factor fan, there's a reveal at the end of this issue that will make you squeal like a little girl. Well, it made me squeal like a little girl. I can't say for you. Thunderbolts is good.
All right. No?
Nah.
Okay. We'll move on to our top 5 list this week. As promised last week, we're going to do our damnedest to give you a top 5 list every episode. So this week, we're doing the top 5 in honor of Serenity, number 1, Leaves on the Wind. Top 5 licensed comics that continue the story that started on TV and movies, someplace like that. And when you're talking about licensed comics, you really can't ignore the juggernaut that is Star Wars.
When you talk about licensing in general,
Yeah, George Lucas, and this is one of the reasons why the man is loaded and a genius, is the licensing deal he worked out for Star Wars, not only with comics, but with figures and bed sheets and lunchboxes and the whole 9 yards. The guy set the stage for how to merchandise things. But Star Wars, it continued the story, even going back to Marvel. Marvel first did the adaptation of the first film, but then you had the continuing adventures of Luke and Han and Leia and the droids and that sort of thing. And after Marvel did their thing, Dark Horse got the license and did over 20 years of stories that were all over the map. From 10,000 years before the Jedi to 1,000 years after Return of the Jedi, and anything and everything before. Now you've got Star Wars Legacy, which is continuing the story of a Solo descendant. I don't remember how she's related, but
it's Han Leia's daughter.
Oh, it is Han Leia's daughter.
So
it's not. Is it Jaina?
No, it's down that line.
Yeah,
it's a direct line descendant in the Solo family, but it's obviously generations removed.
And one of the reasons why these comics have continued to be around and continue to sell is that they're so good. Is that Star Wars fans have loved the Dark Horse stuff. The Marvel stuff was kind of hit or miss because it was the 70s and 80s and kind of goofy. But when Dark Horse got the license, they really went all out to tell amazing stories that Star Wars fans could pore over the minutia and still dig it, and not be pointing out flaws left and right.
And the Star Wars, the Dark Horse stuff really is part of the rebirth of Star Wars in the modern age. There was a dead period between the late 80s and early 90s where nothing was out. And then we started getting the Zahn books on the novel front, and we got the Dark Horse license about the same time. And for the first time, they were sort of interwoven. Things that happened in the Zahn book were referenced in the comic and vice versa. They kind of created a shared universe that's really responsible for one of the reasons they could do so much, is because they kind of all work together to create one Star Wars tapestry, and they're just amazing.
So as far as continuing stories of licensed properties, Star Wars is the 800-pound gorilla. Next up, we've got Buffy, and we'll include Angel in that too, because Buffy the Vampire Slayer ran for, was it 7 seasons? 7 seasons, right?
Yes, 7 seasons.
Yes.
3.5 good ones.
Never a huge ratings giant on TV. A lot of people came to the series late. I was one of those people. I didn't start watching it until it was in syndication. But Buffy Season 8 was this huge deal, again, with Dark Horse Comics, where Joss Whedon came on board and said, you know what, I'm going to write the continuing adventures of these characters that I developed for television. And that was the hook. You got these people that are Buffy fans and Angel fans that would come back to the comics, and many of them who had never picked up a comic book before in their lives. So it was a great opportunity to expose comics to a new audience. And the stories were excellent. We've got Buffy season 8 and 9. We've got Angel season whatever it was. It was Angel and Faith, and we got, I think, 2 years out of that. And now I think those characters are going to appear in Buffy season 10, if I'm not mistaken, which comes out in April. So that still continues, still lives on over at Dark Horse with involvement from Joss Whedon.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing to take from the Buffy Angel story, is that it's sort of the template for how to do it right. Several of the issues of the series were written by people who wrote for the TV series, so it's definitely.
Well, you look at the writers on season 8. You had Whedon, you had Brian K. Vaughan, you had Brad Meltzer, you had Espenson, you had Drew Goddard. All these people that are involved in many forms of media. From writing novels to movies and TV shows, and they wrote comics for Buffy because they love the characters so much. You're next.
All right. Next up on the list, we've got Serenity. Yeah. We have the new series, Leaves on the Wind, which is great because it picks up after the movie. But in a lot of ways, Firefly is one of those licenses that's very big with a very relatively small group. There's diehard fans who love the stuff, but because they're a relatively small number, there's not a lot produced for them. There's never going to be a Star Wars size, series of novels coming out for Serenity. So it's great that the comics medium allows them to do that, to continue the story. The original series, the 3-issue that led into the movie before Serenity came out in theaters was excellent, and was actually co-written by Joss Whedon in that case. I especially enjoyed the little bits that appeared after that. They had some one-shots, some things that appeared in Dark Horse Presents on the MySpace stuff, and they collected that, which also included the very first thing to happen after the movie, the Wash Float Out one-shot, which I can't recommend highly enough, written by Patton Oswalt, and all up through probably the biggest reveal, the biggest thing that's exclusive that you can't find anywhere but comics, is the Shepard book graphic novel. It's an original graphic novel, and it basically tells you the backstory of Shepard Book in a really interesting manner. But he was one of the characters whose question, he's like Wolverine in a lot of ways. He knows all this stuff, he's incredibly capable, but nobody knows exactly where he'd been. Well, if you read the comics, you do.
Yeah, and again, it's a great opportunity to get people into comics who are fans of the show and the movie. Next up, let's talk about the X-Files. The X-Files Season 10 is currently being published by IDW, and direct involvement from series creator Chris Carter. So this is another. There have been X-Files comics before. Topps did them back in the 90s when the show was still on the air. There have been various other X-Files comics over the years, but none have been as good, in my opinion, as this new Season 10 series. Again, with Chris Carter plotting out the stories along with, is it Joe Keating? Who's writing this book? I don't even know. You know who I'm talking about. Maybe we'll put it in the notes somewhere. But and that's what's attractive, I think, for most of us that are fans of these properties in movies and television. We want to see what happens next. We're not getting another season of a show like Firefly. We're not getting another movie, of Serenity. So we get to see the stories in comics format. And the same thing with X-Files. Although we may end up with another movie, from what I hear, somewhere down the road. We're never going to get another X-Files series. So this is it, folks. If you're a fan of these things, you can only find them in comics.
They're remaking The Incredible Mr. Limpet. Never say never.
And for the three of you that understood that reference...
Don Knotts was a big deal.
Okay. All right, well, Transformers, G.I. Joe. We're going to wrap up our list with that, and we're going to include them both together because they're always mentioned in tandem.
Well, they're both owned by Hasbro, so their licenses tend to move together from publisher to publisher. Both were done by Marvel back in the days, and saw a number of smaller press. They went through Devil's Due and Mirage, not Mirage. Number of other publishers.
IDW Image actually published Transformers comics and G.I. Joe comics.
There's one with a weird name, like related to colors.
Dreamwave.
Dreamwave, that's who it was. Which sounds like it might be a Transformer, actually.
Yes. It was related to Soundwave.
But they were cool in that everybody had toys and played with them, and sometimes you have Optimus Prime smash on the football player or the wrestler from your G.I. Joe set. Was his name Sergeant Slaughter? And,
Refrigerator Perry?
Yeah.
William
the fridge.
Refrigerator Perry, yes.
And they were one of the first licenses to realize that it's okay to play in the same playground. We had Marvel did the Transformers G.I. Joe thing way back in the day. It's been done again since, and I believe there's another new one coming out. And it's just interesting. And they're also notable because IDW did a very cool thing with their Regeneration and Real American Heroes, where they went back and continued the old Marvel series. They picked up the numbering where they left off. They have kind of an older art style and covers. And it's very interesting to see these licenses that lived on in comics for so long, for hundreds of issues, kind of picked up and continued separate from their normal continuity or from their modern TV and movie interpretations.
And again, I mean, the fans are very pleased with what IDW has done with Transformers and G.I. Joe. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep buying the comics. So we have a number of diehard Transformers fans that just rave about what's going on in the series over at IDW. So that is our top 5. There are many other ones, but these are ones that are still being published, that have generated good sales and have been favorable with the fans. So if you have any that you think we missed, let us know. Leave us a comment down below. Don't forget, in the show notes, you'll be able to click on links to purchase these comics digitally in our digital store. If it's something you'd like to do, if you're local, we'd rather see you in the store, in the real store. But if you're out of the area, unless you're planning a field trip, you can shop our digital store. Thanks, as always, for watching. If you liked it, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next week.